Hey guys, it's Hype Train here, this time with another video on Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion. Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion is a remake of Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. The original Crisis Core came out for the PlayStation Portable in 2007. It was a prequel to the widely known Final Fantasy VII, the award-winning classic JRPG that came out for the PlayStation 1 all the way back in 1997. Crisis Core Reunion released on December 13th, 2022 for the PS4, PS5, Steam, Switch, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. Reunion is not a port or a remaster, but it's not exactly a full remake either. But for simplicity's sake, I will call it a remake in this review. I am reviewing the Steam version of the game after a 14-hour playthrough on hard difficulty. In this video, I will give my thoughts on whether this remake is still worth playing today. Overall, I think the redone graphics and presentation do a good job of modernizing this game. So all the graphics are completely redone in Unreal Engine 4, making the game look closer to Final Fantasy VII Remake. The redone graphics look great and is a big step up from the PSP visuals in the original Crisis Core. The environments and character models look really good, and you wouldn't think that this game was from 2007 at all. The look and feel of Reunion is definitely modernized, and I think it's a good way to introduce this game to a new generation of gamers who have not played the PSP original. Also, all the in-game cinematics are completely redone as well and look way more modern with the new Unreal Engine 4 graphics. The cinematics are high quality and really help give the game a more modern feel when it comes to the storytelling. There are still CG cutscenes that look like something from the PS1 era, and these cinematics do look jarring at times when compared to the redone cinematics, but there aren't too many of them. There's new English and Japanese voice acting for all the voice lines in this game. I mostly played the game with the Japanese voiceovers, and the Japanese voices sound great and really fit the whole atmosphere of the game well. I've seen clips of the English voice acting, and unfortunately this game will be yet another victim of a JRPG with bad English dubbing. There's new English voice actors for Reunion when compared to the original Crisis Core, and I do see a lot of people who are unhappy with the voice work of Zack's new voice actor. A lot of the English voice lines for Zack sound awkward and phoned in. In fact, a lot of people miss the original voice actor for Zack in the PSP original. But do note that the dialogue writing for this game was never that great, and the English voice actors are just working with the script they are given. The soundtrack has been redone as well, with new tracks being added. The sound design definitely gives the game a Final Fantasy vibe, but I don't think that there are any tracks that sound as great as the infamous soundtracks in the mainline Final Fantasy games. There's more tracks that give the game more of an action game feel, and there's not as much orchestral JRPG type music in this game. The storyline follows Zack Fair and his time in Soldier. Set before the events of Final Fantasy VII, the storyline goes into the backstory of Cloud, Shinra, and Sephiroth. Sephiroth has two friends named Genesis and Angel, and both of them go AWOL during a mission. Zack is promoted and he gets sent on missions to find out what happened to Genesis and Angel. Genesis is the main villain in this game, and you will find out why him and Angel have defected from Soldier. And through the storyline, you will meet a lot of iconic characters from Final Fantasy VII, including Cloud, Yuffie, Aerith, Sephiroth, Tifa, and much more. So the storyline is a mixed bag for me. The dialogue writing tends to go overboard into being too goofy, and I definitely didn't really understand the conversations on Dumb Apples, for example. I didn't really like Genesis as a main villain, and the way he goes around quoting poetry is again a bit too goofy for my taste. I actually like Zack as a main character. I find him entertaining, and I like the way he interacts with all the other characters in this game. In particular, I really enjoyed the emotional and intimate scenes with Aerith. I definitely enjoyed learning more about the backstories of Tifa, Cloud, Sephiroth, and Aerith. And the events of this game really connect very well to the storyline of Final Fantasy VII, and it really helps you understand all the characters and major events in Final Fantasy VII a bit more. Final Fantasy VII was one of my favorite games of all time, and the storyline and characters were my favorite parts of the game. So understanding more of the big iconic moments in the Final Fantasy VII storyline was a big highlight of Reunion for me. The gameplay loop is where the game will feel like it was originally a handheld game. The game is split into 10 chapters, with each chapter lasting about an hour to complete. In each chapter, you go through corridor type areas that are linear, although there are some side paths where you can find extra items. It's always easy to figure out where to go and what you need to do to progress in the game. While going through these areas, you fight random battles against enemies. There's usually a boss fight at the end of each chapter. The structure of the game definitely does feel a bit more like an action hack and slash game rather than a full-on JRPG. When you're not doing the main storyline, you can explore the city of Midgar. You can talk to NPCs, learn more about the setting and backstory, and talking to NPCs can sometimes unlock new side missions. You can also get new materia or spells through the Shinra building. The city of Midgar isn't really that big, and there aren't really other cities or towns in the game where you can explore and talk to NPCs. So this part of the game, once again, doesn't feel like a full-on JRPG. At save points, you can buy items from the shop or take on side missions. There are a lot of side missions that unlock over time. In these side missions, you are put into several battle maps where you fight and defeat different groups of enemies. There's a lot of enemy variety, and the difficulty of these missions will escalate. These side missions reward special gear and materia, and you can actually get overpowered very early on in the game grinding these side missions. Overall, the structure of the game does feel like it's meant to be enjoyed in bite-sized amounts of time, as it was a handheld game originally. It does keep the game more focused and fast-paced, more like an action hack-and-slash game. It does, however, make the game feel like it's not a full-on complete JRPG experience, where it's a big open world and you have multiple towns, dungeons, and side content to explore. The original Crisis Core was known to have an action combat system, which was a big departure at the time for the Final Fantasy series and JRPGs in general. The combat in Reunion had been updated to feel faster and more responsive, and something that would be more in line with the combat in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Attack timing, animations, and the camera have all been updated to make combat feel smoother and more fluid. Zack can do basic slash attacks, a roll, and a block. He also has access to materia, which are different abilities such as elemental attacks, stylish combos, and heals. You can use these abilities at any time by holding a shoulder button. During combat, there will be a slot machine called the DMW, or the Digital Mind Wave, that spins away in the top corner of the screen. This slot machine gives you all sorts of bonuses in battle. If all three characters on the real match up, you get a full limit break attack that depends on which character is shown on the reel. If all three reels are numbers that match up, you get powerful bonuses such as immunity to physical attacks or unlimited MP for battle. When the DMW lands on 3 summon images, this will summon classic Final Fantasy icons like Ifrit, Bahamut, and Odin. The DMW is a cool mechanic that adds a little bit of RNG to the battles, making them more interesting and less repetitive. Overall, the combat is enjoyable enough, and the attacks do look stylish and have great impact. I respect that when the game came out in 2007, this was groundbreaking combat for a JRPG. There's definitely modern JRPGs out there that do action combat better with way more depth. including Square's own Final Fantasy VII Remake. So you only control Zack in this game. You don't have other playable characters or party. There's not a whole lot of materia or spells available in the game when compared to other JRPGs such as the mainline Final Fantasy games. You can only have up to 4 materia at a time, or else you have to wait until a battle is over to change your materia. You can equip up to 4 accessories, and you have to upgrade accessory slots through doing side missions. The combat itself is simplistic by today's standards. The normal difficulty is not really difficult at all for the most part, especially when you start doing side missions to get new gear, and I had to increase the difficulty to hard. There's not really any post-game content for this game. There is New Game Plus, and there are 3 difficulties in this game: easy, normal, and hard. There are 300 side missions in the game, and if you beat all the side missions, you get to fight a secret boss. So overall, I don't think that this game is really that great when it comes to replay value and post-game content. Here I will sum up all the positives of this game. The redone graphics are really good, and it really does make the game feel closer to Final Fantasy VII Remake. I really enjoy seeing the interactions with my favorite Final Fantasy VII characters. I really like how the storyline in this game ended up connecting to the events of Final Fantasy VII and helping me understand more about Final Fantasy VII's big storyline events. The action combat is fun, and for the time it was released, was groundbreaking for a JRPG. You can see how the combat is somewhat of a predecessor to the combat in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Here I'll sum up all the negatives of this game. The game tends to go overboard in being goofy with the writing, especially with the dialogue. Even as a Final Fantasy game, which is known for that type of writing, in this game I felt like it was a bit too much at times. The English voice acting is not that great, and there's not as much memorable soundtracks in this game. The structure of this game definitely feels like a handheld game, and doesn't feel as complete as a normal JRPG title. While the action combat is enjoyable, it's not quite as in-depth as modern JRPGs with action combat. It's a mostly simplistic and short game with not much replay value or post-game content. This is my first time playing Crisis Core myself, and overall it's a very mixed bag. I think for anyone who's really into the Final Fantasy series and into Final Fantasy VII in particular, it's worth playing through and worth the $50. I think playing this game and the Final Fantasy VII Remake is the best way to enjoy the Final Fantasy VII storyline if you've never played the originals. Playing through Crisis Core will really help you understand a lot of the big events in Final Fantasy VII, which had one of my favorite storylines in any game. For anyone who does not have that much interest in Final Fantasy VII or is not super into JRPGs, if you can get past the somewhat dated gameplay and know that this used to be a handheld game from 2007, you can enjoy the game. If you're on the fence and not sure if the game is your cup of tea, I'd wait for a sale. So if you want a game with the most modern action gameplay that's close to something like Tales of Arise, this game might not be for you. If you want a game that's a complete JRPG experience with multiple towns and large dungeons and post-game content, this game might not be for you. Overall, I give this game a 7 out of 10. Square did a good job modernizing the PSP game for a modern audience for those who've never played the original. And this is definitely one of the most unique and ambitious Final Fantasy games out there. I respect that the game at the time was groundbreaking for what it was, especially the action combat and how it was a portable Final Fantasy game with quality cutscenes, voice acting, and PS1/PS2 style graphics. At the same time, the remake does retain parts of the game that might feel a bit dated by today's standards, and it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And the game definitely feels more like an action hack and slash game rather than a full-on JRPG. As a massive fan of Final Fantasy VII, I really enjoyed my playthrough of Reunion, especially the storyline. For those who don't have as much interest in Final Fantasy VII or JRPGs in general, it might not be for them, and they might want to spend their money on a more modern game. If you like this video, please click on the like and subscribe button. It helps out my channel, and it helps me put out more content on JRPGs such as this video. My name is Hytrain, I am signing out, and I'll see you next time.